People like to compare language learning to a video game and leveling up, but that metaphor doesn't work. Let me explain. So if you've been following me for a while, you know that this particular month we started another one of our Tigrinya courses, and we had 7 people sign up. They were all at different levels, but 5 of them were beginners. Even though they were all starting from the beginning, they weren't all starting from the same place. And that's why the video game illustration doesn't work. When you're in a video game, you start from level 1. You have to go through all of the different levels, including the bosses. You can't skip any. Language learning is more like a choose-your-own-adventure book. And for those of you who are younger than me, you're probably like, what in the world is that? They have apps now, too, where you can choose your own adventure. Choose your own adventure anything allows you to pick the story just like you would in real life. For these 5 that I mentioned that were in the beginner, they all had very different circumstances. 2 of them were non-Habesha like me, and they would be learning Tigrinya for volunteer work. They already knew a little bit about how to read, but they needed to tighten up their reading and also learn different greetings and how to ask questions for the volunteer work they were doing. The other 3 were Habesha, but also super different circumstances. One was a Habesha who had spoken Tigrinya at home as a kid and forgotten most of it, and had recently learned a little bit of Arabic and wanted to get back to his roots. So some of it was just reactivating in his brain what he had already heard and being able to ask questions in a safe space. Another Habesha man had heard a little bit of Tigrinya at home as a kid, but then had forgotten all of it. So he needed to start from the beginning, and build his way up from there. And the last was a Habesha woman who already spoke fluent Amharic and wanted to also do volunteer work in the Tigrinya community, but wasn't really sure how to get beyond the salamtas, the hello, how are yous. With those 5 different sets of circumstances, even the 2 non-Habesha that were learning for volunteer work, one was a teenager and the other was in her 30s, they all needed to start in different places. For the 2 that were non-natives, we had them both start with taking what I call the Tigrinya eye test, where I show you the first fidalat in each row, and you can see which ones you recognize. Then, since the reading and writing course is still in development, they got to get a sneak peek of it. So whichever fidalat they didn't recognize, I was able to send them the video link to view on their own. And we also went through the Unit 1 curriculum, but not in the order that I had it written, in the order that they needed it. We have to start with the basics of looking at the example conversation that I showed at the beginning that says, okay, this is where I want you to get. And now let's look at the concepts that are in this conversation. So after the example conversation, we also go into trouble phrases where they can keep the conversation going, which is, how do you say this? What do you mean? What does that mean? Everything after that is negotiable. So I give them 2 or 3 options that they can choose from, and they get to pick what we do next. That way they're engaged, and it's also practical for what they need it for. With the 2 non-natives, one of them went through the curriculum that way, and the other one actually said, well, I would like to go a little bit off the beaten path and just focus on creating reusable scripts for what I need to do. And we can do that. That's why I'm more of a coach and not a teacher. With the Habesha, we also had some discussions that started from the original curriculum, but then they had things come up from their childhood, like, oh, I heard that word before, but how would I use that in context? And is there a way to use it that's more polite or less formal? And we would have discussions like that about the culture. But my point here is a lot of people are getting stuck either using an app, or they have a teacher that goes straight from the book, or even worse, especially when you're learning a language with a different writing system, their teacher insists on them learning how to read and write before they do anything else. 4 out of these 5 beginner students could not read and write Tigrinya. So we were able to help them to improve their conversation skills without knowing how to read and write by using a little bit of transliteration, which is writing the Tigrinya fidalat in Latin ABC letters so you're able to read it. That's good for beginner level, but after intermediate, you want to get out of that because it becomes a crutch. Just side note, many people are focusing on hacks to get their language learning faster, or following a particular set of steps. But language learning, especially if it's a language that you like, that maybe your life partner speaks, or close friends of yours or family members speak, it's going to be a long-term endeavor. Even for me, I would say my Tigrinya is advanced now. This month, we're recording in February 2025. It's actually 10 years with Tigrinya for me, but I still have to do things at least on a weekly basis, sometimes every other day basis, to keep my interest up and my vocabulary up. Right now, I'm reading a book about Eritrean history in Tigrinya, and I'm also sometimes just binge watching different songs from Tigray and Eritrea. But you just have to find a way that keeps you engaged and also helps you to grow. I was talking with my colleague about this in another episode for Beyond the Questions, which helps people to improve their English skills, that most people don't know how to make a study plan. That episode will be coming out later this month. So once it's ready, I'll put a link to that in the comments if you want to check that out. But to create a study plan that actually works for you, it has to be personalized and practical for you. Otherwise, you're not going to stick with it. As I said, 10 years. There have been some days, some months even, where I'm like, I'm sick of this language. I ain't doing it anymore. And you have to be able to find something that will help you stick it out. If you're looking forward to seeing that reading and writing course, I finally finished recording it this past week. So now I have to finish editing it. The hope is that it will be ready by the summertime. If you'd like updates on that, you can sign up to my Tigrinlish email list. I'll put the link for that down in the description and the comments. And you'll get a monthly update with a learning mindset tip like this and an update on the course, plus a coupon code when it's ready. But until next time, this is Gaby. Sanay Maalti.